Have you ever felt trapped in a routine that, on the outside, seems perfect, but deep down, you know something isn't right? This is when temptation can appear, often from the most unexpected places. In today's video, we will explore the power of true love and how it can overcome even the most challenging moments of loneliness and doubt. If you're going through this, I promise that this video will show you a new perspective and a solution to your emotional challenges. Let's transform this pain into an opportunity for growth together. My name is Emily, and I'm 28 years old. Today, I'm going to share a very personal story, one that might help you reflect on the choices we make in life and the value of emotional connection in relationships. But before we dive into the story, have you subscribed to the channel yet? If this introduction has already piqued your interest, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss the rest of this and other stories I will share. Now, let's embark on this journey together. From a young age, I always dreamed of a great love. That romantic idea of finding someone who would complete me, who would be by my side in all situations, through joys and difficulties. I wanted a relationship based on respect, mutual admiration, and above all, true love. When I met John, it seemed like all those dreams were finally coming true. We met during a trip with friends on one of those days that feel like they're straight out of a movie. It was a sunny afternoon, and we were on a secluded beach in the coast of Cornwall, England. The calm blue sea reflected the clear sky as the gentle ocean breeze caressed our faces. John was talking to a mutual friend when our eyes met. It was as if time had stopped. He smiled at me, and I felt an immediate connection. He had a calm demeanor, almost introspective, but at the same time, he exuded a security that drew me in. We started talking, and from that moment, it was as if we were in our own world. John was funny, intelligent, and shared many of the same values and dreams as I did. We spent the rest of that day together, talking about everything and nothing at the same time. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, I already knew he would be someone special in my life. In the days that followed, we began to meet more frequently. We went for walks in the park, candlelit dinners, and spent hours talking about our dreams for the future. Every moment with John was like a new chapter in a love story that I never wanted to end. He made me feel safe, loved, and most importantly, valued. It didn't take long for us to become inseparable. Our relationship grew naturally and healthily. John had a unique way of making me feel special. He was the kind of person who always put others before himself, and I admired that about him. When he proposed to me, it was on a magical night. We were on a trip to the Cotswolds, staying in a small country cottage we had rented. The sky was incredibly starry, and the only light we had was from the candles we lit on the porch. He knelt down, took my hand, and with a shy smile, asked me if I wanted to spend the rest of my life by his side. I knew that was the moment I had been waiting for since the day I met him, and without hesitation, I said yes. If you've ever had a moment as special as this, share it in the comments. I want to know how your proposal went, or a moment that marked the beginning of your great love. We got married in a simple but full of love ceremony, surrounded by our families and closest friends. We decided that our wedding would be something intimate, focused on us and the people who were truly part of our lives. It was an unforgettable day, where every smile and every tear of joy seemed to seal the beginning of a new journey. After the wedding, we moved to a small town in the Lake District, England. The town had a unique charm, with its cobblestone streets, old houses, and flower-filled squares. There was a tranquility there that I had never experienced before, a feeling that time passed more slowly, allowing us to enjoy the small moments in life. In the first few years, our life was filled with love and companionship. John worked as a civil engineer on a local project, something he loved because he always enjoyed building and creating new things. I, on the other hand, worked as a teacher at a town school, a job that brought me immense satisfaction. I loved seeing the sparkle in the children's eyes when they learned something new, and knowing that I was contributing to their future filled me with pride. Our routines complemented each other. I would prepare breakfast every day while John read the newspaper and told me the latest news. In the evenings, he would always come home with a smile on his face, and I would welcome him with a dinner prepared with love. The conversations during meals were the highlight of my day. We talked about our dreams, plans for the future, and laughed together about the little things that happened throughout the day. Our weekends were reserved for just the two of us. We enjoyed exploring the surrounding areas, hiking in the nearby mountains, or simply spending the day at home, watching movies and cooking together. There was a peace in our relationship, a feeling that everything was in its right place. I felt complete and believed that this love would last forever. But over time, I started to notice small changes. John was becoming more and more involved in his work. The project he was leading was becoming more complex, demanding more of his time and energy. I began to notice that he was coming home later, often exhausted, without the same enthusiasm as before. Our dinners became quieter, and the long conversations were replaced by brief dialogues or him falling asleep on the couch while we watched a movie. Have you ever experienced a moment when things started to change in a relationship? How did you handle it? Leave your comment and share your experience. I'd love to hear about it. It was in this context that Adam entered our lives. He was a new colleague of John's who had recently moved to town. John brought him over for dinner at our house, and that's where I met him. Adam was outgoing, funny, and quickly became a regular presence in our lives. He had an easygoing nature, a knack for making friends, and quickly integrated into our circle of friends. Adam was the kind of person who could light up a room just with his presence. He had an energy that seemed to infect everyone around him. When he arrived in town, he brought with him a breath of fresh air, something that shook up the routine I was used to. He talked about his travels, his experiences in other cities and countries, and I found myself fascinated by his stories. He brought a lightness, a sense of freedom that contrasted with the seriousness and weight of the responsibilities that John carried. Our conversations flowed naturally, and he always seemed to know what to say to make me smile, especially on the days when John was absent. I found myself looking forward to his visits, and that worried me. I knew I was seeking in Adam the attention and affection that John could no longer give me. At the same time, I struggled with these feelings, trying to convince myself that it was just a friendship, something innocent. After all, I was a married woman, and I loved my husband. But there was something about Adam, something I couldn't ignore. As time went on, Adam began to visit even when John wasn't home. He would say he was stopping by to chat, to have a coffee, or just to say hi. I enjoyed his company. He filled the void I felt when John was busy. He seemed to understand what I was going through, and our conversations went beyond the trivial. We talked about dreams, desires, and eventually, about the difficulties I was facing in my marriage. He listened attentively, without judgment, and offered advice that often made me reflect on my own life. If you've ever been in a similar situation, give this video a like and share your experience. Your story could help others going through the same thing. With each passing day, my life seemed to be divided into two distinct worlds. On one side was my life with John, a life built on years of love, respect, and companionship. On the other was the growing attraction to Adam, who seemed to offer a new possibility, something I hadn't felt in a long time. The thrill of the unknown, the warmth of novelty. But this division was consuming me from the inside, and I knew I couldn't sustain this duality for long without consequences. Every time Adam came to my house, I felt caught in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. When he rang the doorbell, my heart raced. The anticipation of his arrival, the excitement of our conversations, all of it became a momentary relief for the loneliness I felt when John was absent. But at the same time, this same excitement was accompanied by a wave of guilt, an uncomfortable awareness that I was allowing a dangerous line to be crossed. I remember a specific afternoon when the weight of this duality became almost unbearable. We were sitting on the porch, drinking coffee that Adam had brought from a small cafe he had discovered in town. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the distant hills. And for a brief moment, everything seemed perfect. Adam was telling a funny story about his youth, something that made me laugh for real, something I hadn't done in a long time. But then he stopped talking and looked directly into my eyes. There was a charged silence, where the unspoken words floated in the air between us. I could feel the tension building, like a storm about to break. Adam leaned in a little closer, and for a second, I thought he was going to kiss me. My heart was racing, my mind was spinning, and in that brief instant, I felt a deep desire to lose myself in that moment, to forget everything that was at stake, and simply surrender. But at the same time, another part of me, the part that knew how much I loved John, screamed in my mind. The image of John's face, his laughter, the moments we shared together, all of it came to the surface like an anchor pulling me back to reality. I pulled back slightly, trying to smile to ease the tension, but the smile didn't reach my eyes. Adam seemed to sense my hesitation and pulled back too, his expression shifting from expectation to understanding. What followed was a conversation I never thought I'd have. Adam, with all his sincerity, asked me what was happening between us. He said he felt something for me, but didn't want to complicate my life. He wanted to know if I felt the same, if there was a chance for something more between us. The question hung in the air like a sword, splitting my heart in two. I wanted to tell the truth, to admit that yes, there was something there, something I couldn't deny. But I also knew that by doing so, I would be betraying everything John and I had built. The pain of this decision, of this impossible choice, was like a knot forming in my chest. I looked at Adam, and for a moment, the weight of my emotions almost overwhelmed me. I wanted to cry, to scream, to run away from everything that was suffocating me. But instead, I took a deep breath and told him that while there was something between us, something we couldn't ignore, I couldn't betray John. I said I was confused, that I was hurt, but that I still loved my husband. Adam listened in silence, his eyes showing a mix of sadness and understanding. He nodded slowly, as if accepting something inevitable. That night, after Adam left, I sat in the living room, in the dark, trying to process everything that had happened. The silence of the house felt heavier than ever, and for the first time, I felt the true impact of my actions. I was playing with fire, and I knew that if I didn't make a decision, I could lose everything that mattered most to me. The following days were a blur of conflicting emotions. During the day, I tried to focus on work, but my mind kept returning to that moment on the porch, to Adam's gaze, to the words we exchanged. At night, when John called to say he was okay, I felt a pang of guilt, as if I were betraying his trust just by being near another man. But at the same time, there was a part of me that longed for more of those moments with Adam, for more of that attention I missed in my marriage. I knew I was at a crossroads, and that the choice I made would not only affect my life but the lives of everyone around me. I felt trapped in a trap of my own making, and I couldn't see a way out that wouldn't leave scars. During those lonely nights, I began to reflect on what I really wanted from my life, from my marriage, and from myself. I remembered the vows John and I made to each other on our wedding day. We promised to be together in good times and bad, in sickness and in health, in wealth and in poverty. But what did those words mean now, in the face of temptation and doubt? Was our love strong enough to overcome this crisis? Or had I already gone too far to turn back? The more I thought about it, the more I realized that the only way to resolve this dilemma was to be honest. Not just with John, but also with myself. I needed to understand where these feelings for Adam were coming from. What was really missing in my life that made me feel so vulnerable to a new connection? I knew that without facing these issues head-on, I would never find the peace I so desperately wanted. Finally, one night when the tension inside me felt unbearable, I decided to write a letter to John. I sat at the table with a blank sheet of paper and a pen and let my thoughts flow. I wrote about my loneliness, about how I felt distant from him, about the conversations with Adam, and how much all of this was hurting me. But above all, I wrote about the love I still felt for him, about my desire to rebuild our marriage and find a way to reconnect. I finished the letter with tears in my eyes, but feeling a relief I hadn't felt in a long time. I knew this letter would be the beginning of a difficult but necessary conversation. I knew that if there was any hope of saving our marriage, I would have to be open and honest about everything that was happening inside me. If you've ever felt torn between what is right and what your heart desires, share it in the comments. Your experience could be a reflection point for many of us. During those weeks, I found myself increasingly torn between what my heart desired and what my mind knew was right. Adam's visits continued, and with each encounter, the weight of my guilt grew. I knew there was something wrong with finding so much pleasure in the company of another man, but at the same time, I couldn't avoid the feeling of emptiness that filled my life whenever John was absent. In every conversation with Adam, I found myself sharing parts of myself that I hadn't expressed in a long time. He seemed to understand my insecurities and fears in a way that John, being so engrossed in work, could no longer grasp. There was a connection that drew me in, and I felt that, with him, I could be completely myself, without the filters I had learned to use over time. Adam made me laugh, made me feel young and alive again, but along with these emotions came a shadow of doubt that troubled me. However, at night, when I was alone in my bed, reality always came back with full force. The memories of John, the man I chose to love, flooded my mind. I remembered our first moments together, how he had always been by my side in difficult times, and all the promises we made to each other. I knew that if I continued on this path with Adam, I would be betraying everything we had built together. One of the hardest nights was when Adam looked me in the eyes and, with an almost painful sincerity, asked me if I felt anything for him. There was a part of me that wanted to say yes, that wanted to explore what could happen between us, but the other part, the part that knew the value of what I had with John, couldn't utter those words. Instead, I was overwhelmed by a wave of sadness and guilt that made me realize that no matter what I felt for Adam, my love for John was deeper and more real. I knew I had to make a choice. And that choice was not just between two men, but between two different paths for my life. One path was that of temptation, of the desire for something new and exciting, but which would inevitably lead to the destruction of what I valued most. The other path was that of commitment, of fidelity to the love that John and I had built together, and of the dedication to overcoming the difficulties we were facing. That night, I cried like I hadn't in a long time. I felt a mix of relief and pain, as if I were leaving behind something that should never have started. I knew I needed to tell John what was happening, but I feared his reaction. The fear of hurting him, of losing his trust, and of destroying our marriage paralyzed me. But at the same time, I knew that the only way to save our relationship was to be completely honest. The next day, while John was away on another of his trips, I decided I couldn't keep living in this anguish. I called Adam and asked him to come to my house. When he arrived, it was already late, and the sky was covered with clouds, reflecting the turmoil of emotions inside me. We sat on the couch, and I looked at him with a seriousness I hadn't shown before. With a trembling voice, I explained that we couldn't continue seeing each other the way we were. I told him that as much as I enjoyed his company, my heart belonged to John, and I couldn't betray the man I chose to spend my life with. Adam, to my surprise, reacted with a maturity and understanding I hadn't expected. He took my hand and said he understood. He said he never wanted to cause problems in my marriage and that he respected my decision. There was a heavy silence between us, but also a relief, as if we were finally putting things back on the right track. In that moment, I knew I had made the right decision, but I also knew that I still had to face the hardest part, telling John. That night, I stayed up late, trying to find the right words to explain everything to John. I replayed every moment, every word spoken by Adam, every feeling I had nurtured, and the anguish consumed me. I knew this conversation could change everything between us, but I also knew it was the only way to rebuild our relationship on solid ground. When John returned from his trip, I hugged him as if it were the last time. I smelled the familiar scent of his skin, heard the beat of his heart, and remembered everything he meant to me. I knew I was about to put our marriage at risk, but I also knew that honesty was the only path to redemption. We sat at the kitchen table, the place where so many important conversations had already taken place. The silence was palpable, and I knew I had to speak before I lost the courage. With tears in my eyes, I told John about my loneliness, about how I felt distant from him, and about how Adam had temporarily filled that void. I told him that while I had never physically betrayed him, the emotional betrayal had been real, and that this devastated me. I told him that I loved him, that I had never stopped loving him, but that I needed him to understand how much I was hurting and lost. The words came out disjointedly as I tried to explain the inexplicable. John listened in silence, his face reflecting a mixture of pain, surprise, and concern. When I finished, the silence that followed was more painful than any words he could have said. I braced myself for the worst, for shouting, for accusations, for the end of everything we had built. But to my surprise, John didn't react with anger. Instead, he held my hands firmly and, in a low, restrained voice, told me that he missed me too, that he had noticed how distant we were becoming, but didn't know how to change it. He confessed that during his trips, he often wondered if he was doing the right thing by dedicating so much to work and distancing himself from our life together. And there, in that moment of shared vulnerability, we both realized that there was still a chance for us, a chance to reconnect and rebuild what was slipping away. If this story is making you reflect on your own choices, don't forget to like this video. It helps me continue bringing more relevant content to you. Since then, our relationship has strengthened like never before. We learned to communicate better, to value the time we spend together, and to never take each other's love for granted. We decided to take a vacation together, something we hadn't done in a long time. We traveled to a peaceful place where we could reconnect, away from the pressures and responsibilities of everyday life. It was during this trip that we remembered why we fell in love, why we chose each other, and how our love was still the foundation of everything we had built. Adam understood what had happened and respectfully distanced himself, maintaining our friendship but giving the necessary space for John and me to rebuild our connection. He moved to another city, accepting a new job opportunity, and since then, we've only talked occasionally. I hold no grudge, on the contrary. I'm grateful to him for making me see what really mattered. Another aspect that was crucial in our journey of reconciliation was mutual support. John and I realized that for our relationship to thrive, we needed to be allies, not adversaries. We stopped seeing problems as something that separated us and started viewing them as challenges we could overcome together. This shift in perspective made all the difference. From this experience, we understood that love is a daily choice. It's not something that simply happens or disappears. It's something we cultivate with our actions, words, and thoughts. Every day, we choose to love, respect, and support each other, knowing that this is the foundation for a lasting and happy relationship. Moreover, our experience taught me the importance of seeking help when needed. We talked to a couples therapist, something I never thought we'd need, but it ended up being extremely valuable. Having a safe space where we could express our feelings without fear of judgment helped us better understand ourselves and each other. Sometimes, we need an external perspective to see what we can't see on our own. If you believe that love is a daily choice, share this video with someone you think needs to hear this message. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories and relationship tips. Finally, I want to leave a message for everyone watching. Don't give up on love. Even when things seem difficult, even when you feel tempted to seek outside what's missing inside, remember that true love is worth it. It requires work, yes, but it's work that rewards with a deep and lasting connection that can overcome any challenge. After everything we've been through, I realized that true love isn't just about happy and easy moments. It's about how we deal with difficulties, how we face challenges, and above all, how we choose to stay by the side of the one we love, even when things aren't perfect. In the most difficult moments, it's easy to be tempted to seek comfort outside the relationship. The novelty, the attention from someone new, may seem like a quick solution to the loneliness or frustration we feel. But I've learned that this is an illusory solution. The true strength of a relationship lies in the ability of both partners to look inward and reconnect, even when it's hard. John and I learned the hard way that communication is the foundation of any lasting relationship. We realized that we had stopped communicating openly and honestly, and this had created a space between us that others could fill. However, instead of letting this space drive us apart, we decided to work together to eliminate it. We started dedicating time to each other again, listening to each other without judgment, and valuing the small moments that, in the end, are the most important. Another crucial lesson I took from this experience was the importance of not idealizing the perfect relationship. We're all human, which means we make mistakes, have doubts, and sometimes feel lacking. But that doesn't mean the love is gone or that we need to seek outside what we already have within us. I learned that true love is imperfect, but it's in these imperfections that it strengthens. One of the most important things John and I did was to revisit the memories that brought us together in the first place. Remembering why we fell in love, what made us choose each other as life partners, helped us rebuild the foundation of our relationship. Revisiting those moments gave us the strength and motivation to work together on our relationship, and the understanding that sometimes we need to rediscover the love that already exists instead of seeking something new. I also learned that forgiving yourself is essential. For a long time, I blamed myself for letting things get to the point they did. But the truth is, we're all vulnerable, and what matters is how we react when we realize we're on the wrong path. The ability to forgive myself and John for our shortcomings allowed us to move forward and rebuild our connection. Today, I can say that our love is stronger than ever because we went through a difficult test and came out of it more united. We know we're not perfect, but we're committed to continuing to grow together, learning from our mistakes, and celebrating our victories, no matter how small. Our trip to a peaceful place was a milestone in this healing and reconnection process. Being away from it all, just the two of us, allowed us to reconnect with the essence of our relationship, away from the distractions and pressures of everyday life. Adam was a catalyst for this transformation. Although he initially represented a temptation, he ended up being the mirror that reflected what was truly missing in our relationship. His presence, paradoxically, helped us see what we needed to change to save our marriage. That's why, instead of anger or resentment, what I feel is gratitude for him playing a crucial role at that moment in our lives. And you, have you ever been in a situation where you had to rediscover the love in your relationship? Leave a comment sharing your story. Your experience can help many find their way back to true love. Thank you for joining me on this journey to the end. If this story touched your heart, subscribe to the channel to keep receiving more content like this. And remember, true love always finds a way. See you in the next video.